So if we now look at why do we need this, I think kind of we've covered some of that stuff already. But what we're looking at here is specific use cases and why Zero Trust kind of helps us to move forward, and why that should be our security posture. So obviously, over the last couple of years, there's been a massive increase in remote working that's been forced upon us. A lot of people have adjusted to that by opening up access to a lot of resources. And it's now coming to the point where we're questioning whether whether we're in a strong enough position. So we're starting to consider things like, where are people working from? So it literally could be anywhere at the moment. We've opened up access to things, and now we need to start looking at where people are working from and how we make sure that we are protecting our resources no matter where people are sitting. We're looking at whether we are providing devices. So there is a bit of a device shortage at the moment. It's difficult to get our hands on certain devices. So people are starting to use their own devices for working reasons. And we got to understand whether that is providing an inherent security flaw and whether there's anything we can do to protect ourselves from that. We've got to look at how we're limiting access to things that we've provided. So a lot of people's default response to kind of enforced remote working was to open up Teams and to open up collaboration tools and to give people access to things in the cloud. And now there's potentially not enough limits in place as to what people can access and where they can access them from. So we need to go back and look at that kind of methodology. And we're also got to look at how we're protecting our assets. Now, these assets include our users, they include our devices, and they include our data. So how are we protecting all of those things? And do we have sufficient steps in place so that the increase in remote working is not going to negatively impact our stance and our protection of what we are in control of and what could actually hurt the business if these things got out into the wrong hands? We're also starting to look at people returning to the office now. So as part of that return to the office, people are starting to plan those elements. But as part of that, there's an opportunity to promote hybrid work. This provides benefits for both the users and for the company. So a correctly implemented model around Zero Trust and making sure that people have got sufficient access to the things they need, but in a secure and managed and compliant method, can enable flexibility for everybody. Now, the kind of mantra around this is anytime, anywhere, any device, and we should be able to let users work within those parameters. So it enables them to work at any place, at any time of the day, from any device, and get things done. But in order to achieve that, in order to enable that, we need to make sure that we are fully secure. So it can provide cost benefits. A lot of people don't need the same level of real estate, don't need the same level of offices that they've had before. It can provide productivity benefits. The greater flexibility leads into those productivity benefits. And often we could find that it improves employees' morale because they've got that extra flexibility, they've got that extra ability to do what they need when they need to do it, and they're not tied to a desk and they're not tied to being in an office from 9 to 5. A correctly implemented Zero Trust model can enable and demonstrate that you trust your employees to do what they need to do when they need to do it, and that can have a massive positive effect. In order to do that, what we need to do really is, at a high level, is just reduce our risk. So we've got a few risks listed here. It's not by any means a complete list of what our risks are. But what we're trying to get around with these kind of things are unauthenticated access. So these could be things like compromised accounts. So if people get stung by phishing attacks, or credentials get leaked, or they go to a third-party system and their credentials get compromised, we need to be able to protect against that. We also need to look out for things like anonymous access. So within some of our collaboration platforms, we allow people to access meetings anonymously. We allow people to access data anonymously, and we allow certain levels of documents to be shared anonymously. And we need to make sure that that is not creating an inherent risk that things will get out when they shouldn't. We're trying to protect against data leakage. Data leakage can provide reputational damage. Certain pieces of data within the organization absolutely should not be leaving our kind of platforms and things that we're in control of. We've also got elements of compliance breaches, particularly in the last couple of years with an increase in data protection regulations. These things can have massive impact on the business. And there are a lot of regulated industries as well, where certain bits of data just shouldn't be leaving our control. And we've also got things that can result in financial penalties. So we want to be looking to protect against that. And a strong overarching security posture helps us with that. What we also want to do from a risk perspective is we want to protect our privileged users. So these include people with administrator roles, and we want to look at ways of making sure those administrators are protected, that they're even more difficult to breach. And if they do get breached, that we've protected those roles in such a way that they're not sat on administrator privileges the whole time if we can help it. We've also got VIP users. So when we talk about VIP users, we're looking at kind of company executives, people whose details are likely to be in the public domain. They're going to be slightly easier for a malicious actor to guess the parameters of. So it would be quite easy for you to guess the email address and the login name of a CEO of a company, because you can find their domain on the website and you can find their name on the website typically. And there's not many combinations of that they would be using as an email address. So we want to make sure that those important people who are, if their credentials get into the wrong hands, messages get sent on their behalf, it becomes reputationally damaging. We want to make sure we're considering those areas of risk as well as part of our strategies. One of the things that we often have to recognize is that our users are in fact a weakness to us in some ways. They're also our greatest asset. Our businesses don't go anywhere without the people within it, but we can put in as many technical constraints as we want. There are always people within the business that are going to find a way to achieve what they're trying to do. So people will inherently always find the simplest way to achieve their goal. If they can do something slightly quicker, they will try and do that because it makes them more efficient. What we need to do is enable them to do their job whilst reducing risk. So a great example of this is a lot of people put a lot of restrictions on how you can share things within Teams, within SharePoint, and within other areas of Microsoft 365. If we're putting blockers in the way of people sharing their data with external partners, for example, they're going to find another way to do that. For us to be fully secure, what we want to do is we want to enable a best practice way of sharing and collaborating, which involves using those tools that we've got authority over. But if we're blocking them from easily sharing and doing things along those lines, they're just going to find another tool set to use. They're going to start emailing copies of the data out where we could potentially start to lose control of that, or they're going to find another file sharing platform which enables them to take it out of our remit altogether. So we want to enable people, but we want to reduce our risk at the same time. So there's definitely a trade-off with the security strategy. What we could do is we could just shut all the doors. We could just say, do you know what, we're looking at this from a position of security and we want to be protected. So we're only going to allow access to our devices from verified accounts, from managed devices, and from managed premises. And that's completely possible. But we lose a lot of things within that instance. So we start to lose the increased productivity that we've created by giving people the ability to work from anywhere. We start to lose the efficiency we've created where people are able to use these tools to best practice, to start to work better and smarter. We lose our kind of controlled collaboration. We're not enabling people to do those things, so they'll find another way around it. So rather than keeping our data secure, which is what we believe we're doing, we're actually forcing people to find another way to do their jobs, and we then lose the ability to audit a lot of that activity. So what we want to do, this just goes back to the previous slide, what we're trying to do is enable people to work better within the tools that we've got. And by opening up certain aspects of those tools, it actually gives us more control over where our data and where our resources are living.